Hello and welcome to this KineMaster course, where you will learn how to edit your videos professionally using your handheld device, be it a tablet or a smartphone. After completing this course, you will be able to edit your videos efficiently using KineMaster's user interface and the tools it provides. We will progress gradually, starting with the simplest video editing techniques, all the way to advanced ones such as color keying, animations, alpha channels, and audio effects. To achieve this, we'll be using a pre-recorded game footage and apply various transitions and effects to make for some great video highlights. At the end, we will also look at some undocumented functionality of KineMaster, which may affect your ability to successfully produce videos and how to overcome these. I hope that you will enjoy this course and that it will become a valuable milestone in your video editing career. Welcome to the first lecture of this course, where we'll discuss video qualities and frame rates to provide you with a general idea how to record and edit your videos. Even before we get into video editing itself, let's double check how we actually record our videos. This is because devices can be set up for various formats and frame rates, even some non-standard ones, which could make things tricky once we decide to actually edit such a video. Every mobile phone is different, and so the settings you see may look different on your device. This screen capture was taken using Samsung Galaxy S8, so the settings shown are related to it. First, make sure that we are recording videos in one of the standard HD or Full HD resolutions. As you can see, this smartphone supports some non-standard resolutions, such as 18.5:9 or 1:1, from which resulting videos would need to be adjusted if we wanted to work with them in KineMaster. The UHD option that you can see here is actually called 4K in real life, but on this phone it is named Ultra HD. Any of the standard SD or HD options here would work. The next thing to take into considerations is the FPS. This stands for frames per second, and there are multiple frame rates recognized around the world. For example, all analog televisions in Europe would display your movies in 25 FPS, while televisions in the USA would work on 30 FPS. To make things even more interesting, there are also 23.976 FPS and 29.97 FPS frame rates recognized. However, we don't have to usually bother with television standards, and our phone will be set either to 25 or 30 FPS directly from the manufacturer. What we will need to know is what frame rate our videos use, so we can eventually export using the same frame rate in KineMaster. Fortunately, we can find out the frame rate of a video in KineMaster quite easily using the media browser. By long pressing on a video clip, you'll be able to see extended media information such as file name, frame rate, resolution, and duration. Some videos have what's called a variable bitrate, which means that they were not recorded in constant 30 FPS, but in order to save some disk space, sections with little to no movement would have their frame rate decreased. Such videos can report a non-standard frame rate, such as 45 FPS. In these cases, your video frame rate would be the closest standard FPS value. For example, a 45 FPS video would have a frame rate of 30 FPS, which you can use to export your final video. What we also need to consider is whether our phone supports the new rising 60 FPS standard, which allows for a much smoother video recording while doubling the size of our video files. Let me show you an example of what a 30 FPS and the 60 FPS videos look like side by side. You can see a kind of choppiness with the 30 FPS one, while a 60 FPS video is much like how we normally perceive the reality around us. This, however, comes at a cost. Not only the video file size is much bigger, but also processing such video file takes double the resources required to process a normal 30 FPS one. Due to this fact, KineMaster hides the support for 60 FPS videos in an experimental settings section, while also limiting you in a way you can work with it, such as almost completely removing the possibility to speed it up unless you're sporting a nice new iPhone 8, etc. Therefore, it's best to experiment with your camera settings and the resulting videos in KineMaster so you can perceive the possible limitations of your mobile device. If you'd like to, for example, create cooking videos where speeding up is many times required, but your smartphone is not powerful enough for KineMaster to allow this, it would be a better idea to record in 30 FPS instead, or maybe buy a new iPhone. On the other hand, recording at 60 FPS could make for some very nice slow motion videos. So, as I said, don't be afraid to experiment and find out what your device is capable of. In this lecture, we have learned how to record your videos with the correct resolution and frame rates, as well as test your device for its video editing capabilities. Welcome to the next lecture of KineMaster, where we will talk about the user interface of the app. User interface is divided into 4 parts: timeline, media wheel, action bar, and video preview. From these 4, only the media wheel remains unchanged. Every other part changes as you edit your videos. From the media wheel, you can add media and backgrounds to your project, as well as overlay layers, audio files, voiceovers, or take videos and pictures directly in KineMaster. On the contrary, the action bar changes its appearance based on the item you are editing on the timeline. The timeline shows all the videos, text layers, audio tracks, effects, and pictures in sequence as they'll appear in the final video. The preview section will then show a live preview of the part that is currently being edited. Let's talk about media wheel first. You will use the media wheel every time you want to add a new video, picture, effect, sticker, handwriting, or audio to your project. There are parts of the media wheel that are duplicated over the user interface, as well as other ones that can appear confusing until you get used to them. Let us therefore prevent the confusion before it can start. The actual media button serves only to insert videos and pictures into our project. You cannot add music or narrations using this button. Also, the media button will add the selected media into the main timeline. This is basically the first topmost strip containing all the videos and pictures in our project. Everything below are extra layers, or better said overlays, which can play the role of picture-in-picture videos, stickers, text effects, audio tracks, etc. This also means that your project will be only as long as anything on the main timeline. KineMaster will simply ignore everything beyond the last media file on the main timeline if it's located in any of the other layers below. The Layers button will only be enabled if your device is powerful enough to use overlay effects, videos, and pictures in your project. It contains several sub-buttons, one of which is also called Media. You can use this button to add more videos and pictures to your project to be displayed above media files located on the main timeline. The logic here is the same. This button can only add videos and pictures, nothing else. The other buttons here are used to add various additional overlay objects, such as stickers, written text, visual effects, or handwriting. We will get deeper into these and the difference between the videos and pictures on the main timeline and in overlay layers in a subsequent lecture. Both the voice and audio buttons will add audio tracks to your project. The voice button will allow you to record a voiceover directly in KineMaster. For this, KineMaster will ask you for recording permission first. The audio button will allow you to add pre-recorded sound files, such as background music, sound effects, or pre-recorded voiceovers to the project. The red middle button will allow you to take pictures and record videos directly from KineMaster. This feature, however, only worked when taking pictures for me, and I wasn't able to record any videos even after confirming all permission dialogues. After successfully adding a media file onto the timeline and selecting it by tapping on it, we can already see that the action bar on the left side has changed accordingly. What's more, the media wheel has been covered by yet another contextual menu, in which we will spend probably the most time in the whole app. This menu lists all the operations that you can perform on the selected media or layer. We will work with this menu extensively in all subsequent lectures, where each of these actions will be explained in detail. You can now also see that the timeline contains the newly added media and that the preview has been updated with the correct display. As we scrub through the timeline, we can see other objects located on the timeline, and the preview will keep up on updating as well. These are the main parts of the user interface that we will use most of the time. Remaining is perhaps only the application settings menu and the welcome screen that you'll see when you open KineMaster. All of the settings are pretty self-explanatory, and users will seldom need to change any of these, perhaps except for an experimental 60 FPS option that will be explained in a lecture that talks about exporting your project. In this lecture, we have visited the user interface, learned about the media wheel, action bar, timeline, and preview. We've also seen how the edited object changes content of the action bar and brings up an additional context menu. Welcome to the lecture of KineMaster, which will guide you through the first steps of editing a video. This is the part when the fun starts and you can finally put your fingers on the screen. When you first start KineMaster, you will be greeted by this beautifully animating welcome screen where you can start a new project, adjust app settings, ask for help, or go shopping. We will choose to create a new project by tapping the largest middle button with the plus sign on it. The welcome screen will look a little differently once you already have some projects created. You will see these projects on the right side while you'll still be able to use all the other buttons as usual. Our newly created project is currently empty, so let's add some media to it. For this, we will use the media button, which will open the media browser, listing all the videos and pictures that KineMaster finds on your phone. You can access details of any of these files by tapping and holding on top of it. This brings up an information window where you can preview the video as well as see its attributes such as file name, duration, file size, resolution, and frame rate. In this window, you can also add the media file into favorites, which will add it to the special favorites folder in the browser for quick access. You can also delete the file from the system here, but be careful when doing so, as this action is not undoable, and the file will be lost from your device forever. If you discover that there are pictures and videos mixed up in any of the folders, and you would like to only work with, for example, videos, you can find the filtering options that you can access by tapping the right menu button handy. You can choose to either show pictures or videos in this way. Once you find the desired media file, you can add it to the timeline by simply tapping on it, or you can also use the information window to add it via the plus button. Either way, the video will be added to the timeline at the point we are currently at. Since we have no media on the timeline yet, the video will be added to the beginning of the project, and KineMaster will scroll to the end of this newly added media file. Apart from the preview of our video, we can also see a watermark present in the preview area. Because KineMaster is a paid app, you will need to pay about £23 for a subscription for 1 year, or about £3 to try KineMaster for 1 month in order to get rid of this watermark and also gain some perks of the premium users, such as some free assets from the shop. The logo will be displayed over your final project once you export it, unless you do so. The app is free to use and doesn't have any limitations other than the watermark in its free version, so we can as well work with it as it is for our learning purposes. Now that we have this out of the way, let's continue by checking what we've just added to the timeline. For this course, I chose a recording of a gameplay from the mobile game called Mobile Legends. This is an action-paced, competitive multiplayer game where 5 people try to compete against 5 other people with the objective of destroying each other's base. Being what it is, the game provides a lot of interesting scenes, that we can use to create highlights from for our presentation purposes. In the next lecture, we will look into how to actually edit the video clips that we added to the timeline. In this lecture, we have learned how to use the media browser to navigate through pictures and videos on your handheld device and how to add these onto the timeline. Welcome to the lecture of KineMaster that will guide you through the various ways of cutting and trimming your videos that you've added to the timeline in the previous lecture. As a first step in the editing process, you'd want to cut out all the parts of your media files that you're sure not to use in the final project. I'm scrubbing the timeline here to do exactly this, moving through the original video and finding the relevant parts to delete them from our composition. This is one big recording of about 20 minutes in length, so I'm basically going through all of it, picking up the interesting parts, and deleting the ones that I do not need. Let's have a look at how to do this. We are going from the beginning, so I'll use the lower left arrow button to get to the beginning of the project. Once at the beginning, the button changes to an opposite arrow, which allows you to go to the end of the project. We can start playing the video by clicking on the play button, which immediately changes to pause. Since I have an idea where we want to start the video, we can cut out the beginning, as that only contains screen recording of the operating system on my smartphone. To do so, I will scrub the timeline to get to a point where the operating system scene ends and the actual game footage begins. Once there, I can tap on the video in order to bring up the operations overlay. In this overlay, you can see many operations that we can perform on the selected video. We'll go through them one by one as we need them later in our project. One inconsistency of the user interface of KineMaster is that these buttons in the operations overlay are sometimes displayed with a text caption and other times they are just icons on the button. If you'd like some more consistency, you can tap this button to make all these buttons icons only, without any text. I'm going to leave the user interface in its initial state, so it's less confusing for people who see this interface for the first time. We will utilize the split/trim option, which will allow us to remove the unnecessary parts in a couple of ways. In here, for example, I'm going to get rid of the beginning of the video, which contains some screens of the Android operating system, which we do not need in our final project. I will therefore scrub to the point where the Android section ends and the actual game footage begins. Once there, I will use the trim to left of playhead option to remove everything before this very point. There is an opposite option as well, which will allow you to trim everything from the point you are at to the right side of it. Another option you can utilize is to split the video at the playhead. You will use this if you want to cut out the section in the middle of your video clip that you don't want in the final project. To do so, you will first split the video at the point where the unwanted part you want to delete starts, then scrub the timeline to get to the end of that unwanted part, and split the video again. You can then tap the unwanted part and use the delete button to remove it from the timeline. In case you find out that any of the video clips left on the timeline are too short or too long, you can simply tap on them and use the left or right handle to change their cut points by dragging the handle to the left or right. This concludes the basic cutting and trimming lecture. In the next lecture, I will show you a simple wizard that will allow you to create a full project from a subset of media files that you already prepared in advance. In this lecture, we have learned how to trim and split your media files on the timeline and how to use the left and right handle to change cut points of these videos. Welcome to the next lecture of KineMaster, which will show you a simple wizard and how to quickly create a final project from a subset of media files that you prepared in advance. If you don't need to use all the fancy effects and overlays that KineMaster offers, and save some time creating the final video, you can use the wizard that's accessible from the main screen of the app. It is a simple step-by-step process where you name your project, pick the media files to be used, select the theme for them, pick some background music, and there you go. KineMaster will generate the full project for you that will contain all the media files selected on the main timeline with some predefined transitions applied and the background music added as a new layer. This could be useful if you have, for example, pictures from a wedding or multiple videos from a holiday that you want to stitch together and present to your family and friends. Because our product is just a big 20 minutes long video, this wizard will not do any good to it. However, if we had multiple videos and some pictures to go along, we could see a very different result. This is the simplest way to create a video presentation using KineMaster. This also concludes this short lecture about the video editing wizard. In the next lecture, we will look into how to add some transitions to our project in order to make it more attractive. In this lecture, we have reviewed the video editing wizard of KineMaster. Welcome to the next lecture, where we start making the video more attractive by adding transitions and an intro. Before jumping into the mentioned subjects, let's quickly recap trimming and splitting from the previous lecture. We can trim the video by tapping on it and selecting the scissors icon button. The first option is to trim the whole clip to left or right. We'll use this when we want to cut everything from this video clip to the left or the right side from our current position in it. We can achieve a similar result by splitting the video at the position where the unwanted part ends and the good one starts. Then we would select the unwanted section and delete it by using the delete button. Another situation where we'd use the split option is if we wanted to cut out a part of that video that is unwanted but situated somewhere in the middle of it. We will first find the point where the unwanted part starts, split the video there, then continue to the point where the unwanted part ends, split the video again, and then delete the unwanted part by using the delete button. If we made a mistake and made the cut a little bit off from where we intended it, we can use the left or right handle to adjust the video duration and subsequently the cut point. Using rough cut such as this one is frequently used in movies to create fast-changing action scenes. We'll also leave several of such rough cuts in our final project to achieve the same effect. However, to advance our story forward, such rough cuts could be unreadable for the audience, and therefore we'll need a transition to make that advance more prominent. If we take this scene, for example, the action cut is there, but it's a little bit confusing because no action really follows, but a loader is shown instead. We could utilize a transition here to make this story progression clearer to the audience. Maybe you realized by now that there are empty spaces between video clips, which KineMaster will simply skip if there is no transition set for them. However, by tapping on the empty space, you can add an arbitrary transition at that point. There is a load of transitions included with KineMaster that you can try out, and there is a lot more of them that you can download from the shop, some of which are available for premium users only. The great thing is that any transition you choose, you can also instantly preview. We'll pick one from the Fun Transitions section and check out how our project looks with that transition. You can also adjust the transition duration if you like. I don't know about you, but I'm pleased. Even with transitions applied, you can still use the left and right handle to make adjustments to the video's length. One of the annoyances of KineMaster, however, is that due to those predefined empty sections between videos, KineMaster will not allow you to have a video clip on the timeline that is shorter than two shortest transition durations combined. This can make for some headaches if we want to cut very short action scenes, but should be bearable for the common user still. There are certain limitations that mobile apps will have that you won't encounter on a PC application, and we will get into some more along the way, of which I will always warn you. After adding a few more transitions, it's time for our project to receive an attractive intro. For this, we'll use a new clip operation that's called Clip Graphics. Once again, there's a few of these prepared in KineMaster for us, and some more available in the shop for download. From here, you can add titles to your videos or apply one of the title packs, which usually includes an intro, a lower third, which is basically a fancy name of putting someone's name or a breaking news section to the lower third part of the screen, and an outro. I chose to use the powerful title pack as it does really strike me as powerful intro to have in our project. As for the outro, we can use the same title pack to keep the graphics consistent. We will simply apply the ending scene of this powerful title pack to the ending scene that we have prepared in our project, and there we go. Our job for this lecture is done, and we have added some attractivity to our project. In the next lecture, we'll start looking at adding some overlay layers to apply a bit of blurring effects to the outro sequence in order to make it even more awesome. In this lecture, we'll learn how to apply transitions and create intro and outro for our projects. Welcome to the next lecture, where we'll talk about overlay layers and how to use them in KineMaster. Before jumping into the subject, let's recap how to add transitions from the previous lecture. In order to add a transition, you will need at least two clips on the main timeline. Then, you tap on the box between these two clips. Then, you'll choose a transition that will best suit your needs, while simultaneously previewing it. You can still use the left and right handle of each of these clips to move in and out points of the chosen transition. Let's now move to the end of our project to review the outro. It looks amazing, but it can look even better if we apply a blurring effect to the end of it. In order to do so, we will utilize an effects layer. We'll tap the Layers button and choose Effects from it. Quite opposite to the number of transitions, the effect selection is limited to two effects by default in KineMaster. The first one is called Gaussian Blur, and the next one is called Mosaic. There is a lot more effects available in the shop, should you need them for your projects. A lot of these are free for premium users. We will utilize Gaussian Blur for the effect we are after. After choosing Gaussian Blur, you can see that a new layer has been added to the project below the main timeline. Once we click on that layer, we can see that it brings up its own set of operations in the operations overlay that we can apply to it. We have already mentioned the inconsistency of KineMaster and its user interface, and you can see here a nice example of that. For some reason, the three top buttons are used to apply animations to the layer. Below them, we can see some familiar operations, such as trim/split, that we will use just like on any of the media clips on the main timeline. We will use the trim option to get rid of the Gaussian blur that overlaps beyond the end of our project, and then also to trim the part of the blur layer that starts too soon before our preferred endpoint. Now we've got a blur layer exactly where we wanted it to be. However, when we play the video back, we can see that the blur effect kind of drops in without the transition, which makes it look a little surprising and unprofessional. So maybe it's time for those animation buttons to be put into good use. Before doing so, however, let's have a look at what animations actually are. Animations can be similar to transitions in a sense that they are also a fancy way of presenting a media file in KineMaster. However, transitions can only work on the main timeline where there are two neighboring videos to transitions from one to another, while animations can be applied to layers to change their appearance, dimensions, and opacity. This allows for some nice predefined in and out animations of these layers as a result. And let me also shed a few words of praise towards Korean developers of KineMaster, since all of these transitions and animations are so well optimized that you will not experience any stuttering while playing them back or previewing them. By applying basic fade animation to the blur layer, we can make it appear to fade in instead of abruptly drop into the picture. Now, we can only use half a second animation duration here, so we'll need to make some additional adjustments. Remember the parts to the right of the blur layer that we trimmed out before? Well, let's put them back so we can apply a 1 second animation duration here as a bit of a hack. This way, our blur layer can fade in slowly and we get the effect that we wanted. Since we are talking about layers, let's add another one to illustrate why they are called that. For example, let's add a sticker to the video for some fun. You can see that when we add a new layer, they stack on top of each other, overlaying the media on the main timeline and one another as well. Apart from media layers, of which you can have only limited amount, you can have unlimited amount of other types of layers in your project. You can use this button here to actually display the layers view, which will show you the layers in your project in a more prominent way. To get back to the normal view, just use the same button again or click on one of the layers. Let's play around with this crown sticker to finalize this lecture. We can make it a bit smaller and rotate it to position it on one of the corners of the winning video. Furthermore, we will add an in and out animation to make this crown sticker appear and disappear in style. You may see that some of the in and out animations are the same, while others are completely different. So don't count on the ability to use the same animation for both the in and the out points. Okay, we've had our fun and the outro looks kind of crazy now. So let's remove the crown sticker and leave the outro like that. In the next lecture, we will look into how to make some more interesting animations in the middle of our project. In this lecture, we have learned how to work with layers and add effects and stickers to our project, as well as how to animate them and subsequently remove them from the project. Welcome to the lecture of KineMaster, where we will learn some advanced video editing techniques to create a funny plug in our project. Before doing so, however, let's recap how to add layers and animations to them. In order to add a layer, you will need to tap the layer button and then tap on the layer type you want to add. For example, to add a Gaussian blur, we'll choose to add an effect layer. This adds a new layer below our main timeline and makes the main video file look a bit blurry. Now let's animate this Gaussian blur effect to actually get displayed gradually by the means of fading in. For this, we will tap the layer and choose an in animation of fade. This is looking a bit better. Now we can also add an out animation to fade the blurriness away after a couple of seconds. Excellent! We have just overlaid our nasty first death in the game by a blurring effect. How convenient! Okay, let's get to some advanced work with our layers. First of all, let's add some background music to the project for good measure. We will look into audio and how to work with it in KineMaster later on, so we'll just simply add a new audio layer by using the audio button. In here, you can pick from music that's already existing on your mobile device, or you can go to the store and browse for some background music that's freely available from KineMaster. We've already downloaded background music from KineMaster store that's called Snowboarding, and we'll use it for our project as it is a fairly dynamic piece of work. This will add a new audio layer to the project. You can see that audio layers are always positioned at the bottom of your project. Now we'll scrub to the same footage that we were blurring out before, and this time we will make it more prominent and funny instead. I've grown a habit of splitting the video at the playhead at the position where I'm starting some new work. Therefore, I'll split the video where the scene of our impending death starts, and then I'll split the video where we already died as well. Now we can work with this video strip separately from the rest of the videos on the main timeline. Now, because there is a limited number of undo actions available in KineMaster, I will duplicate this video strip to make some experiments on the copy instead. This way, I'll make sure that I won't lose the original no matter what I do with the copy. Since we want to make this a little bit funny and more prominent, we can use a new operation from the operations overlay that is called speed control and is used to slow down or speed up the video clip. We'll experiment with the speed until we find the right setting for it. Now that we have a normal speed as well as a slowed down version of the dead instance, I think it looks like an instant replay of a kind, and I have decided that I will keep both clips on the timeline as they are. The one thing that I will apply, however, is a transition from the normal speed clip to this slowed down one. It took a while, but I think I've got the right transition applied. Now, when we play the project back, it feels like the sound from the slowed down video isn't very appealing on the instant replay part. But something comes to my mind. If you lived back in 2016 or 2017, you might remember a lot of Thug Life videos roaming around the internet where fairly random scenes were slowed down, put into black and white, and had a certain soundbite and a logo applied to all of them.
Will the real Slim Shady please stand up?
Well, how about creating one of those for the memory's sake? I have downloaded the soundbite that's used in the Thug Life videos, so let's mute our instant replay by tapping the volume operation and then tapping the button for mute. And then add the Thug Life soundbite at the beginning of the replay instead. You can see that audio files will be added to the position where the playhead is currently located. Now let's play the result. Okay, that sounds better. However, it looks like the video starts a bit sooner than the sound. Remember the left and right handle of each layer that you can use to trim the videos or change their in and out cut points? We will use the left handle to trim a bit of silence from the beginning of the audio file. Then we'll long hold on the audio layer to move it a bit to the left so it starts a little bit sooner, perhaps even as soon as the transition itself. Let's have a listen now. The beginning sounds a bit better now. However, the full clip is still a bit too long and the audio should be a little shorter in order to make the scene funny and punching. Let's therefore shorten the audio and continue to some more visual adjustments for the replay. As I said, the Thug Life videos are usually converted to black and white, so for this effect, we will use the color filter operation on the clip on the main timeline. There's a lot of color filters that you can apply here, and we will apply the black and white one. Now that's starting to look like a tag life video now, but it's still missing a bit of action. I'm thinking about zooming in to my game character to make it more readable as what this instant replay is really about. And here comes one of the interesting points in KineMaster, where the user interface has the same functionality duplicated on two separate places and using two different control methods. Zooming in on the main timeline is actually called cropping. And probably to make it simple for new users, KineMaster people decided to create a simple user interface for it, where you select the initial zoom state and the final zoom state that you want to apply. This will create a zoom animation from the in point to the out point. This is all great and stuff and makes what we need to do easy and simple, at least for this particular instance. There are 2 or 3 downsides to this user interface though. First, if you want to zoom in and then after some time zoom out of the same zoomed picture or video, the user interface makes it basically impossible to do so. There is no reverse button, nor is there a copy parameters one, so you are left with trying to zoom in to the same exact picture as the previous endpoint and then restoring the view to its original video size. Since the interface is pinch and zoom, there is basically no way you can match the exact point for the first video's out point and the second one's in point. You can actually use layers to do what I tried to do here with the zoom in and zoom out, and we will get to this a bit later in our course. It involves another cropping interface for layers that is completely different than the one on the main timeline and some animations, which we haven't learned how to do yet. For our simple zoom-in requirement of the tag live video, however, the original pinch and zoom interface will suffice. So, we will choose an in point that is a bit zoomed in to my character and out point that is a lot more zoomed in to my character. This is now looking good. However, the song is still too long and the animation should end with the dead scene, not a scene where the character is still standing. So, we will once again shorten the audio file and also use the left handle on the video on the main timeline to move its in cut point a little bit further towards the action. This is looking pretty good now, and the only thing that's missing is the Tag Live logo. I have previously downloaded the logo from the internet, and we can add it to the project by using the layer menu. However, it's in the black color, which is not very visible on the video. Now, KineMaster is not a graphical editor, so you won't be able to change the color of your pictures other than using one of the predefined color filter operations. However, since I will only need to change black to white, this is fortunately possible directly in KineMaster itself by using yet another operation called color adjustment. These are some basic adjustments that you can apply to any media file, and we will utilize the brightness slider to make the transparent logo as bright as possible, meaning it will be basically changed from black to white. Now, the only thing remaining is to position the logo on the actual media file. When you tap on the picture on the timeline, you can see that just like we have previously manipulated the crown sticker, you can also manipulate any other layer that you have currently selected. We will reposition the logo so it doesn't stand in the way where we don't want it to be, and for the added effect, we will add an in animation to it as it enters the screen along with the transition on the main timeline. Let's play the resulting video and clap our hands. We've done some nice animation and color adjustment work here. In the next lecture, we will look into how to add some manual animations and text effects to our project. In this lecture, we have learned how to add music to your video, change clip speed, its color, add some cropping animation, and add an overlay logo image to your project. Welcome to the lecture of KineMaster, where you will learn how to create custom animations and add some text effects to your project. Before doing so, however, let's recap what we learned in the previous lecture. First, we will add a sound file to our project. For this, we will use the audio button and browse for an existing audio file on our device. We can play the file by tapping the play button and subsequently add it to the timeline by using the plus button. You can see that the file has been added to the current playhead position in our project. Next, let's separate a short movie clip from the video on the main timeline and apply a couple of effects to it. First, we'll apply a color filter to make this video look black and white. Then, we will apply a zoom animation by using the simple cropping interface for the main timeline. As a final touch, let's add a logo to our project. We will browse for the logo using the Layer button and there using the Media button. Now we will position the logo on the clip so it matches our expectation, and we'll also adjust its brightness as to make it white instead of black.
You have been slain.
It's the motherfucking Eagle Double G. Snoop Dogg.
Okay, that's a recap complete, and we can continue with some advanced animation of our layers that we have shortly previewed in the previous lecture. For this, we will utilize a section where our character performs a first kill on an enemy. Just as before, I will split the video at the point close to where the kill actually happens, and then I will split the video again shortly after the kill has already happened. Once we have the section separated like this, we can start some animations on it. Remember the cropping interface that we used to zoom into our video in the previous lecture? This time, we will want to zoom into the actual action as the kill happens, and then zoom out from that same perspective to the original video size. Now, as I previously mentioned, it is possible to create this animation by using layers. This means that we need to create a layer from our newly created strip in order to apply such an animation to it. To do so, we will use the action button that hides additional actions that can be performed on the selected media file, and we'll use the duplicate as layer option there. KineMaster always duplicates a layer with the wrong size, so we'll need to resize it back to full size before we start working on it. Since we discovered that the duration of this video does not cover all the action, we will use the right handle to extend the duration of the layer a bit further to the right. Then, we will use the animation button on the action bar that will allow us to create some custom animations. This interface allows for creating certain points in our video and set a different size and location for it at those points. KineMaster will then animate the video between these points to create a fluent transition from one point to another. We call these points keyframes and this procedure animation. You can see that KineMaster will already have a first keyframe in our video created, so we will need to create 3 more keyframes and change the video size and position at them. We will first create the second keyframe and zoom the video in so it is focused on the action. Then, we will scrub the timeline to the moment where the action ends and create another keyframe. This will be the point where our video will be still zoomed in, and also the point where it should start zooming out back to the full picture. At last, we will add the last keyframe, which will outline the point where the video should be back to its original size and position. At the last keyframe, we will resize the video and play the animation to verify that the animation indeed works. Both of these clips have the same audio and its duplication can be heard. We will therefore need to first split the original clip on the main timeline at the endpoint of the layer below it, and then mute both the original clips on the main timeline to leave only one audio active.
I will love you like you have slain an enemy.
This is the first part of this lecture done. Let's continue onwards to create some text effects for the first kill scene. We will first add a simple text layer that will say first kill, and it will be animated in as the announcer says so. We'll make it yellow so it's nicely visible on the video and position it so it does not cover any of the interface of the game. Text layers have a shadow applied to them by default, so we will leave it on as it looks good and differentiates the text from the background. Let's adjust the duration of the text layer so it corresponds with the announcer and apply some out animation as well, then play the result.
I will love you like potions. You have slain an enemy.
This is now looking quite good. However, since this is such a special situation, we should really try for some explosive effect on the text layer. As I previously mentioned, layers stack on top of each other, overlaying one another, which we can use to actually create an explosive kind of effect above the main video, but below the first kill text layer. We will therefore use the menu action button and choose to duplicate the text layer. A new layer will be added to the timeline that will be positioned below the original text layer, and we can now apply a fountain in animation in order to create an explosive kind of visual. Now we will adjust this new layer's duration so it's just a little bit shorter than the original layer, and we'll also use the alpha opacity operation to make it a bit more transparent so it's not as prominent as the text layer in the foreground. Let's play the resulting animation now. This amazing animation that we've just created will end the current lecture now. In the next lecture, we will learn how to use the other cropping user interface on layers to create some interesting overlay effects. In this lecture, we have learned how to add custom animations to layers and how to add text layers with special effects to your projects. Welcome to the KineMaster lecture, where we'll learn how to use the cropping interface on layers to create some interesting effects. But before that, let's recap what we learned about custom animations in the previous lecture. We will start by cutting out a strip of our media file where we want to apply a zooming animation. Then, we will tap the layer to display the animation button and click on that. We can see that the first keyframe has already been created for us at the beginning of the strip. We will add the next keyframe by scrubbing the timeline to a position where we want the video to be zoomed in and tap the plus button. Next, we will scrub the timeline to the place where we still want the video to be zoomed in to the same location and tap the plus button again. From this point on, the video should start zooming out, and so we will create another keyframe at the end of our animation and reset the video position to its original state there. Afterwards, we'll play the animation.
Double kill. Your team destroyed a turret. You have slain an enemy. Double kill.
Everything seems okay to me. Let's now add some text to it. We'll add a new text layer and apply a simple in and out animation to it. We will leave the drop shadow effect on, and we'll move the text to a section where it doesn't cover anything important. Then, we will duplicate this layer in order to create an explosive background effect for it. We will remove the original in and out animation and apply an overall animation of fountain. Then, we will use the alpha operation to make the background layer more transparent. Let's play the whole animation now.
Double kill. Your team destroyed a turret. You have slain an enemy. Double kill.
Looking good to me. We can continue with our new lecture. Suppose that we have a picture with multiple variations of our logo, and we want to apply one of those variations to our video as a watermark. We could use a graphical editor to crop that logo out and just use that in our project directly. Or we can use this to learn how the cropping interface for layers works in KineMaster. It just so happens that I have a picture with multiple logos that we can use for this exercise. Now, the selection of logos is black, and as we previously saw, black color is not very visible on our videos. Let's once again apply color adjustment to make all these logos white now to make a watermark out of one of them. Once they are all white, we can start cropping them by using the cropping operation on our layer. You can see that once we enter the cropping user interface for a layer, 4 cropping handles appear at the corners on that layer in the preview section. We can now use these handles to start cropping out just the logo that we want to stay in our project. Once we are satisfied, we can simply use the tick confirmation button to deselect the layer. Now, since this should be a watermark, we will place it to the corner of our video and make it a little bit bigger. Also, we will make it a bit more transparent by using the alpha operation again. As you can see, the cropping interface for a layer is much more refined and detailed than one for the main timeline. But what's more, it is further expanded by allowing us to use predefined masks to crop a certain shape out of the layer itself. To enable this functionality, there is a mask switch, which, when turned on, will apply the selected mask on the layer. You can set various masks and even reposition the layer inside that mask to show the section that you are interested in by simply tapping and dragging the layer around in the previous section. Furthermore, you can also make the mask feathered for a more subtle effect as opposed to a clear-cut one. We will use this to put a portrait picture of our character into the corner of the screen for a few seconds in our video. We are now almost finished with the final version of our project, and the last thing to do is to synchronize the visual part of it with the music part. We will talk about music and audio in KineMaster in detail in our semi-final main lecture, but before that, the next one will talk about green screen and how to remove it from your video, which may be helpful to you if you are a gamer, a journalist, or creating any kind of scene that needs to have its background replaced by something more suitable. In this lecture, we have learned how to use the cropping interface of layers to create a watermark and some interesting effects for your project. Welcome to the next lecture, where we'll talk about green screen and chroma key operations. If you are a streamer or you've ever seen a streamer talking through a game on YouTube or Twitch.tv, you have probably noticed that their webcams have backgrounds removed and all that is visible is the head and the torso of the person talking. This allows for some seamless interaction with the audience, as the webcam image doesn't cover too much of the game involved. If you had the chance to see the actual real webcam footage of such streamer, you would see that their background is single-colored, usually green, and that the green color is being removed on the fly as they stream to the audience. The technique to do so is usually referred to as chroma keying, and is also available in KineMaster. This operation is only available on layers, since it wouldn't make sense to remove the color from the background layer. You can pick the color and set the threshold to remove your green screen or other colored background completely from the footage. Apart from using this for webcams, we can achieve some interesting effects when using it on a different footage, such as one where parts of the scene need to be removed and replaced by a different scenery altogether, and are therefore covered in green screen material as well. I will demonstrate this on a clip where a tablet is being held in hand and has a green screen, where we can put the footage of our project that we have created so far. We'll start with the black background on the main timeline and add the tablet footage as a new layer. We will apply the chroma key operation on it so the green color from it is removed, and then we will add one other layer with our project footage and we'll try to resize and position it so it is in sync with the tablet on the video. Once we do so and play the video a bit further, we can see that the hand with tablet is moving slightly and our video is standing still. We will therefore need to apply a technique known as rotoscoping, where we will adjust the size and position of our overlay video with the movement of the hand with tablet. This is a frame-by-frame operation and is very time-consuming, since you need to be very gentle and careful if you want the final animation to look good. This is almost impossible to do well on a smartphone, but using tablet and mouse or other similar setup, you can actually achieve very good results. Let me demonstrate the disadvantage of doing this on a smartphone, since I'm doing this whole course in KineMaster on a Samsung Galaxy smartphone myself. You can see that these few seconds of animation are way off and my rotoscoping mistakes are very visible even to the naked eye. In the next lecture, we will look into how to work with sound and music in KineMaster. In this lecture, we have learned how to use the chroma key operation to remove plain background colors from your videos and how to apply rotoscoping to animate replacement backgrounds in such videos. Welcome to the lecture in which we will learn how to work with sound and music in KineMaster and how to synchronize your projects with it in order to create an emotional response. Because KineMaster is not an audio editing program, there are limited ways in which to work with audio in it. Let's first have a look at what the operations overlay offers us with regards to audio editing. We have already seen the audio operation where we can mute our clip. Here, we can also adjust the volume of our clip, change the audio channels balance in order to make the sound come from the left or right channel more than the other one,
You will all become my slaves.
or adjust the pitch of our clip's original audio.
You will all become my slaves.
You will all become my slaves.
There is also the effect slider, which I couldn't get to do anything, so I won't be shedding more light into how that one works in the series, unfortunately. At last, there is a compressor switch, which from my experience makes the audio much louder than what you can reach by changing the audio slider itself. Similarly to changing the pitch of the clip itself in the audio operation, we can utilize an audio filter, which does almost exactly the same, at least in what KineMaster has to offer so far.
All become my slaves.
There are 4 presets that you can use, one of them being Chipmunk and one of them being a deep one, which are basically exactly the same filters as if we changed the pitch of the audio file directly. The robot and modulation filters are more involved and can be really called filters as such, since they change the actual voice representation completely and not only on the pitch axis.
You will all become my slaves. You will all become my slaves.
And then there is the voice envelope. This is basically animation applied to an audio layer with one difference, that you are actually animating the volume of the audio. This way, you can fade in and fade out or simply change volume to different level within a certain time span. Volume envelope is what I use extensively when working with audio in KineMaster. You can see that you can apply the volume envelope on both video and audio layers. Let's demonstrate this functionality on our first kill scene that we previously created. Now, if you remember from a previous lecture, we have added a snowboarding background audio layer to the project. This snowboarding music now kind of overshouts the actual announcer during the first kill on the media layer. We can, however, use the volume envelope to fade the snowboarding music out a little while the announcer announces the first kill. To do so, we will once again use keyframes, and for all of them, set the volume level we want the music to be at. We can also add a little bit of a fade-out effect to the actual media layer as the snowboarding music fades back in and the announcer's voice ends. Let's play the end result now.
You have slain an enemy.
Now, let me share a little tip on how to use music to create a bit of emotional response for action scenes like this. Most of the time, you will need to utilize your own creativity in order to synchronize the music you have with the video you're given. What I usually do after selecting all the scenes that I want in my project as the first step, the second step is to pick up a music that will fit those scenes. This is an action project, so I chose the snowboarding background music and then continued on to put the scenes one after another at the very places where a beat takes place. If you have a rough cut you want to synchronize with the music, you do best to make such a rough cut at the beat place. Let's take this scene for example. It wouldn't make sense to cut it in the middle of a melody, but it does make a lot of sense to make the cut with the beat in that melody. That outlines the change of scene not just for the eye, but also for the ear. It doesn't make much difference where you actually make a transition when trying to synchronize your project to a music, as the transition usually takes place across several beats and doesn't have to be synchronized to beat music as such. You can see that I don't worry about synchronizing transitions to music in this project either. With regards to narration, KineMaster is quite capable of recording your narration using the voice audio button. You will first need to accept a permission request before it will be possible, and then you simply dictate away. I, however, do not recommend recording narrations directly into KineMaster, since you cannot really apply any equalizers to it once recorded this way. What I usually do is to record your narration in an external program, then play with equalizers to make it sound as good as possible, and only then import it to KineMaster and work with it there. On Android, I have found that Lux's audio editor works well, and it's probably the simplest and most reliable editor out there for Android that I tried so far. It has a very nice equalizer and can export into various sound formats that KineMaster supports. If not for this editor, my voice would sound something like this, and this lecture would be nowhere near as enjoyable as it hopefully is right now. At last, let's have a look at some default settings of KineMaster, which could mess with your music synchronization if you're not aware of them. When I first tried to synchronize my scenes with the background music, I found that KineMaster started to fade all the scenes with transitions as well as in and out points of the project. In order to turn these off, you will need to go to Project Settings. These are not the same as the app settings which you can access from the main screen. To access the settings, you will need to use the Settings button once you open a project. This button is only visible when no layer is selected in your project. In this settings window, you will need to turn off the audio master volume option, as well as automatic fade in and fade out options. The first one will stop auto fading your scenes during a transition, while the other ones will prevent the audio fade in and fade out of the whole project. This now concludes the audio lecture of KineMaster. In the next lecture, we will look into exporting your final project and sharing it on internet or storing it locally. In this lecture, we have learned how to use the audio operation in KineMaster, as well as various audio effects and the audio envelope. We have also learned how to synchronize your project to the background music. Welcome to the final main lecture, where we will learn how to export your final project and store it locally or share it on the internet. If you remember the very first lecture about video sizes and frame rates, the knowledge from it will now come handy. Once your project is ready, there is only a single share button that you will need to push in order to start exporting your final video. In here, you will be able to choose from different resolutions and quality settings. And that's where the knowledge of the original video resolution can help. You can totally choose any of the resolutions here, and your video will be either scaled up or scaled down if the resolution differs from the original one. However, by each scaling upwards, the quality of the exported video will be degraded dramatically. Scaling down is not a problem though. Once you select the resolution of your destination video, you can also choose a frame rate for it. Once again, the knowledge of the original frame rate helps here. Now, as we've learned in a previous lecture, KineMaster does not support exporting in 60 FPS without enabling a special experimental option in the app settings. To do this, you will need to go to the main screen and scroll down to the bottom of the app settings. Once there, click on the experimental settings option and confirm the warning dialog. In here, you can enable exporting your videos in 60 FPS. Once you do this, additional options will be enabled in the FPS section, and you will be able to export your videos in up to 60 FPS frame rate. The quality settings slider will allow you to choose a compromise between the file size and the video quality. The lower the quality, the smaller the file size. I do not recommend doing anything else than boosting the quality to maximum and exporting it that way. Doing this any other way will result in noticeable quality degradation, which is something no one is used to see in videos anymore. Furthermore, no matter what quality your video is in, virtually all of the online services will re-encode your video into something they can play to their visitors, which only degrades the quality further. Once you hit the export button, you will be asked if you want to export with a watermark or you want to buy the premium version of KineMaster instead. When the export starts, you will do good to not switch to any other application and not to lock your phone. This can freeze the export and you will need to do the same thing again. The exported file will be stored in your device and you can play it using Media Player directly or share it using the share dialog to whichever service your heart desires. You can also remove the file from the system here, but as always, be careful when doing so, since this operation is not undoable. Congratulations! You have now finished the whole course of editing your videos professionally on a handheld device using the KineMaster app. All of the subsequent lectures will outline some tips and gotchas of the app that you can come across. They are available. However, you can also choose to skip them and discover the rest of how KineMaster behaves at times on your own. You have now a full knowledge of all the video editing process in the app.